Hello, everyone. My name is Dawn, and today we are meeting with Kevin Miller. Hi, Kevin.
Can you hear me, Don?
Yes, I can.
Okay, now I can hear you. I couldn't hear you at first. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, doing good. Good. How are things in beautiful, where are you at? Myrtle Beach, South Carolina?
Yep.
Nice.
It's actually raining today,
Oh
so
my, really? Yeah, we had some rain out here in California the last couple days, but it's nice and clear today. So,
hopefully that clearness comes our way.
yes, exactly. There you go. Mhm.
I'm
There
ready
you
for
go.
summer to come back.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's a little too cool. A little too cold. I don't like cold, really. I like the
Neither
heat.
do I. And January is literally the only month out of the year that it really ever gets cold in South Carolina. So I am ready for spring.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you on that. So that's great.
So
Well,
you have a book that you published, Heart of Steel. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
yes, that's the first book that I wrote. I can tell you a little bit about that. And actually, it's kind of an interesting story. I learned several years back that my true name isn't Miller after all. It's actually a Polish name, Puchalski. And the way we found that out was I found some newspaper articles from that we got some from cousins at a funeral that said you might want to read these. So we started reading these, and we learned that back in 1920, kind of a scandal took place where my great grandfather was murdered
Okay.
in his sleep. And my grandfather covered this up. It turned out to be pretty scandalous, and he covered this up and he changed our name. And him and his siblings swore an oath of secrecy to never reveal that. And we never knew. My own father didn't even know his last name wasn't really Miller until just in the last few years. So that opened up, a whole new world for me because I began researching it, got all the facts together, and then I wrote a book about the story. And it's Heart of Steel. It won a bronze medal at the Reader's Favorite Book Awards this for 2020.
That's
It was my
exciting.
first. It was my first book. Yeah, it took me about 3 years to write, mostly because not only the research, but because of the just learning how to write. I mean, I'm a
Mhm.
professional web developer and I'm a technical writer. I've done a lot of that, but that doesn't, as you know, it doesn't translate to writing and authoring a book because there's so much to learn there. So I took a lot of time, a lot of classes, a lot of, rewrites and edits and stuff. And 3 years later, Heart of Steel, I self-published that book. And then my second novel, White Skies, Black Mingo, was actually picked up by a small publisher, Headline Books, out of West Virginia. So, and that one took me about 3 months to write. The second one, under the COVID lockdown. What else did I have to do but write another book, right? And so the first book is based on a true story about my grandfather's life because he was a pretty incredible man. At 12 years old, he set out and they found themselves, him and his siblings, in an orphanage, and he ran away and found a job in Chicago, saved enough money to come back and steal his siblings out of that orphanage. And then the last part of it's his love story where he meets my grandmother. So it's got a little bit of everything for everybody. And then the second book is a historical fiction, but it's inspired by the love of my great great grandparents. She was Native American, and he was an Irish son of Irish immigrants. So obviously, you got a forbidden love story there occurring in the 1800s during the Civil War. So been busy working on the third book now, but so right now we're promoting and pushing, White Skies, Black Mingo, and then the Heart of Steel is still getting a lot of love and a lot of attention, a lot of media attention as well.
So you said you kind of studied a lot of how to write and did a lot of
Yeah.
classes. When
Yes.
you did that, how did you what kind of writing process did you come up with for yourself? Did you follow an outline?
Yeah, I kind of discovered that I'm more of a panzer. Although I think some pans, I tend to outline in my head a lot, and I think the story through. I have a kind of a strange process sometimes. I think the story through a lot. A lot of times when I'm going to bed, I'm living the story, and I'm just, letting it kind of tell itself. Because a lot of times while I'm writing, I don't even know exactly what's going to happen, and things just come and they just flow, and it makes total sense the direction that it goes. So yeah, I mean, my process is similar. I mean, I definitely, the first most important thing after the idea, the concept is established, is to research, because I want to make sure all my historical facts, my medical facts, like, everything's accurate and correct before I really start writing. And that, like with Heart of Steel, I just scoured those newspaper articles to take out the timelines, the name of the detectives, and everything that happened, so it could be as accurate as possible. And then in the areas of the story where I just didn't know what happened, you just take, the freedom to create, and this is what I think happened, or something happened, I don't know how it happened, so I have to create how it happened. So,
Mhm.
there's definitely parts in there that are fictional, and a few characters that are fictional, but it ties the story together, to make it, because it's written, even though it's a true story, it's written as a novel. I mean, it's more
Right.
as a novel, and I choose to write in, close POV, third person limited, because I like writing through that character's eyes, so that it's more theatrical, more like kind of watching a movie than
Mhm.
experiencing, the story, firsthand. So, both of my books are written that way in close POV.
But it's really interesting how you you decided to write a book on the subject, and you really focused and you really learned about writing before actually sitting down to write. And I wish a lot of people would do that. I wish a lot of people would go for different writing classes and different things like that, because you learn so much when you learn all the background information, all the story structure, all the point of views, all those different things, because you never know what's really going to work for you unless you know what all is out there and you try your hand at different things.
Yes, absolutely. Totally agree with that. And I wanted to make sure that, because originally with Heart of Steel, my dad came to me. He had all this information and he didn't know how to write the story. And he said, "Would you write this story?" And that's kind of how my writing authoring career started, kind of late in life. And I love it. It's like I'm
Yeah.
going to write books for the rest of my life, because it's like, why didn't I discover this years ago?
Yeah.
And I love storytelling. I've always been a storyteller, and it translates well into my writing and stuff. So, but yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, if there's, aspiring authors out there, definitely take classes, learn as much as you can before you really sit down and start writing, so that, you really, really have a good feel for what you're doing, what you're,
Absolutely. And I love that you said that you did all of your research first. That's something that I can't stress enough to new writers, because if you are in the process of writing your first draft and you have to stop and research something, you're going to lose your flow. Like you're going to
yes,
lose that rhythm that you already have going when you're in the middle of writing. Like you got to make sure you have all your information first to be able to apply it to everything, because if you don't have a certain piece of information, it may change something else that happens in the book later on. So it's so much easier to have all that research up front.
oh, absolutely. Yeah, totally agree with that. Highly recommend doing that, and that helps you write the story too. And if you're an outliner, that helps you put the pieces together. Because once you have all the facts and you know what your story is, then you start piecing it together, kind of like a puzzle. So that's very important, to get your facts straight and to get all your research done. I mean, I understand the enthusiasm to just jump in and start writing. The tendency, the temptation's there, but if you really take the time and set up, set your story up and set all the facts up, it'll write itself. Basically, it'll start to flow. You'll get in that zone, and like
Yes.
like you said, you don't want to get knocked out of the zone by having to go research something real quick. You want to stay in that flow and in your zone, while you have that creativity going.
Absolutely, because it's so hard to get into that zone sometimes. I mean,
Yes.
if you don't have the right space to write, if you don't
Mhm.
have that quiet space to write, if you don't have a lot of time to write, once you get into that zone, that's a very precious time that you really can't really can't waste.
Exactly. No, you definitely want to do that, you know, stay in that area. So
Yeah. Do you have a specific place where you write in order to get into that kind of zone? Do you have an office or?
I actually, yeah, I don't have an office because we're actually in California. I'm actually, we're from Arizona, my family, and I have two teenage daughters here who are actors. They're acting. So, so we have kind of a smaller apartment, two-bedroom apartment. So I write in my bedroom at my desk, you know, and a lot of times I'll spend, you know, late hours there writing and stuff while everybody's sleeping. So that's kind of my zone right there. But they're actors, and actually my daughters are actors and models, and the publisher was willing to use them, you know, in White Skies Black Mingo. That's my daughters on the cover there.
That is awesome.
Yes, and they do have some Native American blood in them, so it worked. So and then there's the actually it's funny because the soldier, the Union soldier there is actually my daughter Emily's boyfriend, current boyfriend. So it wasn't hard to get him to have that longing look, you know, when they
Yeah.
took the pictures, the photography and stuff for that. So made it kind of interesting. But so she's portraying my great great grandmother, Margaret Davis, who was, they said Mingo Indian. The Mingo isn't really a tribe. The Mingo were kind of like rogue members of the Haudenosaunee Nation, which we more commonly know as the Iroquois Nation. So and they were mostly, they called them Ohio Seneca also. They were mostly Seneca and Cayuga, which is uh, two different nations of that of the Haudenosaunee Nation, which they like to be referred to as. So she was you know, so she spoke the Iroquois language, but I just didn't have enough facts historically about her and my great great grandfather. But I pulled in as much as I could in my research, found out what unit he was in the Civil War, and then just the rest of the story is just historical fiction. But it also won an award. It won it just recently won at the New England Book Festival. It won an honorary mention in Best General Fiction. So I was thrilled that my two first books have awards
Absolutely.
attached to them. So that's a huge thrill because it kind of validates what you're doing. You know that
Right.
you must be doing something right. You know, so
And I think that's also important for writers to understand. I think every writer's main goal is I want to be on the bestsellers list, which is a
yeah,
great goal, but
yeah,
there are so many other things out there. There's so many other contests, there's so many other awards, there's so many other lists to be on.
right.
That's not necessarily the New York Times bestsellers list, and they give you the same amount of satisfaction.
Yeah.
And I do. I love that. I mean, there are so many different awards and things out there that
Yeah.
that people I don't think realize. And there's so many other ways that you can get that satisfaction and that validation of I'm doing something right as an
Right.
author.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And with Heart of Steel, you know, I watch my Amazon all the time. Since I self-published that one, I can actually watch the numbers, whereas White Skies Black Mingo was published by traditional publishers. So they kind of have those numbers. But I go up there and it did there's Heart of Steel. And interesting thing here, this is actually my grandson that the photographer used to portray my grandfather. So that was kind of a cool little thing there. And these are actually my great grandparents, the real pictures there. But yeah,
That is awesome.
it's interesting. Yeah, and I did make number one in a category, one of my categories on there, and I've made, you know, the top 100 and several. So I guess like you consider it an Amazon bestseller, so which is it's just
Yeah.
kind of well too. So that's kind of cool.
And
But
honestly, I think I buy most of my books now on Amazon, so that's one of the best lists that I can imagine being on.
sure, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So as far as your writing, you've gone from self-publishing to a traditional publisher. What was the biggest difference between the two?
That's I'm still kind of learning as I go because we just published White Skies just was published last November. There is a difference. I mean, obviously there's a difference in the royalty payouts, but the way I look at it, it's like, okay, if I'm making 70% on Amazon and I sell this amount of books, you know, if I might be making 10 to 15% with a traditional publisher, but if I sell more books, you know, I might make more money. So I'm kind of trying to see how that pans out so that I
Mhm.
know for the third book whether I want to self-publish or traditionally publish. And I think I see a lot of authors who have self-published and have traditionally published, and sometimes they'll go back and self-publish because now they've got a good reading, you know, audience. They've got a lot of fans that they know they're going to sell a lot of books, so why not self-publish it and take a bigger percentage? But the traditional publisher, and Kathy Teets at Headline Books, she's the owner, and she's been around. They've won the best indie publisher for this year, and for like, you know, almost every year they seem like they're winning that award. She's been really good, and she's really good at supporting her authors and creating, you know, conferences and stuff that she'll invite, and you know, the authors in to sit down at a booth and do book signings and stuff. So they're really good at helping to promote, where some of the bigger publishers, you know, might not do quite that much.
Right, and I think that's one of the biggest differences for me between self-publishing and going with a regular publisher, is
Mhm.
that when you go with a regular publisher, you have so many more marketing opportunities
Yes.
because the publisher itself is a marketing brand. So they have connections and they can connect you to so many different opportunities that you wouldn't have in self-publishing. But you make a really, really good point when you say that some people go to go through a regular publisher and then they go back to self-publishing because at that point they already have a name for themselves. They already have a fan base, you know, a collection of readers who know their name. And
Mhm.
I think that's really interesting. And one thing I really want all aspiring authors to know is that no matter which way you go, your book is still going to get out there, and you learn as you go. I mean, you self-publish one, you go with a traditional publisher with the other one, and you learn the differences just like you're doing. And I think that a lot of aspiring authors, they hear so much about self-publishing that they think, oh, that's a better way to go, but it really depends on your book, and it depends on how much time you have to spend on marketing in yourself.
Sure, exactly. No, that's very, very true. And I got it. And you know, in Headline Books has been really good because they'll submit my book to all these different contests, and you know, they'll supply the books. You know, so I'm waiting to hear back from Mom's Choice. You know, I'm hoping, you know, hoping I win one there. You know, that the book wins one there. But she's been really good at submitting, you know, the book to a lot of these big book contests and stuff, and then she'll provide the book. She'll send books to, like, you know, have a PR person, and she sends them the copies of the books for them to, you know, use as you know, review copies, et cetera. So she's been real supportive, real good. We do some, you know, right now with everything locked down, we'll do what's called a Zoom into Books interview, kind of like you and I are doing right now, you know. And um, in the meantime, while they're waiting for everything to open up, I believe their first real conference is going to be in October in West Virginia somewhere. So I'm going to fly back to West Virginia. And since the book is White Skies, Black Mingo is set in West Virginia, and Virginia, it was actually Virginia because it was pre-Civil War, it becomes West Virginia. But so it might be a popular thing to go back there because it's kind of set in that area. So it might be
Yeah.
something that locals might be
So
interested in.
you wrote your second book during when COVID hit and the and everything shut down. So you had a lot of time on your hands to focus on writing. But what about your first book? How did you manage to work in writing around your schedule as far as work and family and everything else?
Yeah, kind of the same thing. I had to really make time. I mean, as authors, you know, we have to set aside our time and really try to find a way to not, because like I heard it said that one of the biggest, you know, crushers of creativity is interruptions, you know, and that's so true because you get these constant interruptions, and then your flow is, you know, messed up for the moment. So you kind of have to find those times where, you know, you have the least amount of chance to be interrupted and you can sit and be creative. So I spent a lot of time in the evenings, you know, when you know, the kids are in bed and everyone's kind of settled down or watching TV or something, to write. Or if, you know, sometimes if I'm home alone, I've got all this time to myself, so I'm going to spend the day, just writing, just getting through that. So, and my wife and my daughters are very good at giving me the time and understanding, to just kind of let me do my thing. And I'll get back to them and spend time with them, and make sure that I, don't neglect those relationships, because I think a lot of us authors, we kind of tend to do that sometimes. We kind of got to say, okay, yeah, I got to, refocus and spend, water my flowers, and spend time with my family. But they've been
Yeah,
real
it's
awesome.
definitely kind of a work writing balance that we have to
Absolutely.
that we have to implement, because you have to make sure that you are focusing on every different aspect of your life,
Yeah.
and writing is part of that, but it's not the entire thing. And I think as writers we can get tunnel vision very easily,
Mhm.
especially when we're really wrapped up in a story that we're passionate about and that we're writing about. It's so easy to just get sucked into that different world that you start
Yes.
to neglect your real world. And
No, you're right, because you're living that world, and and that's how I see it. It's a strange phenomenon, because as you're
yeah.
writing, it's like I'm visualizing this world, and you're there, and you're there, you're living it. And like I said, sometimes it's unexpected, the things that happen, but makes total sense. It's like I didn't expect my story to go this direction, but this makes perfect sense, and this is exactly where it should go. So it's a very cool thing. And like I said, I'm going to be writing until the day. I'm going to write as many books in my lifetime as I possibly can. So
I completely understand that. I think I have about 40 books outlined at the moment that I really need to sit
wow. Good.
down and write.
Yes.
But I don't have that home alone kind of opportunity.
Right.
So I
Right. I
tend
agree.
to stay up a little later, and I tend to do my writing and my outlining between like midnight and 2 a.m.
Gotcha.
because everybody else is asleep and it's the only time I know it's quiet.
Yes, that's a good way to do it there. Yeah. So yeah. So did I lose you there, Don? Hey, hi, Don. Did I lose you?
Oh,
There you
there you
are.
go.
I thought I lost you there for a second there. So we're
It
back.
happens. Technology is great as long as it
Thank God
works.
for editing, right? For editing capabilities. Mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah, so well, that's great. And like I said, I'm a professional web developer too, so I can create my own websites. My author website is authorkevinmiller.com. So I've got a lot of information up there about both books and about myself. So if people want to check it out, there it is. So, and I do my
Yeah.
daughter's websites as well. They're acting websites and stuff. Didn't have to pay anybody for that, which is kind of a nicety.
That is awesome. Yeah, I made my website with WordPress,
Okay.
and I got so wrapped up in how WordPress works that I've actually made my friend a website
Good.
for her hair salon.
Nice.
And it's really interesting how everything pulls together as far as designing a website. I mean, even though WordPress does most of the work for you, it's
Yeah,
really neat to
yeah, yeah. Right. And the WordPress is a good tool, and it's kind of a template and stuff, and you're kind of limited to some parts of the template and stuff, but you can get very creative and make a
Mhm.
really nice website with WordPress. A lot of people love it. So I might, I'll,
Yeah.
so if I have a client that wants WordPress, I can make it in WordPress. But I'm kind of a coder. I've been a web developer since for 20 some years, and I've worked at the city of Peoria in Arizona for 14 years as their web developer, and then I retired early from there, and then now I'm a writer. So I'm more busy now retired than I was when I was actually working.
I think you're the second person I've interviewed who said that same exact thing.
Yes, yes, that's what you have to look forward to, Don. That's what you have.
Yeah. Hopefully in quite a while. I'm only
Yeah, quite a
29.
while. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, quite a while. So later,
And I'm
later.
hoping, because I want being an author to be my only career. I want it to be like
Yeah.
my main thing that I do. So
Mhm.
I'm hoping that if I can get those 40 books actually written, then I
Yeah.
can
Yeah. So do you have
I
books?
can make that as
What
my career.
Yeah. And do you have books out right now, Don? I was curious. I wanted to ask you that about
I
your.
don't yet. So I have my poetry collections that I am self-publishing at the
Nice.
end of March.
Okay.
And after that, I'm gonna put all of my focus into writing all of these books that I have outlined that are sitting in my journal.
You got great ideas. Now you just got to open them up and dive into them.
Exactly.
The mind of an author. Yep. Always creating and thinking. Mhm, mhm. Hmm. Oops, I think I lost you again.
Is
There you are. I think I lost you for a second there.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I was just saying how as a writer, when you have those ideas, you can't just let them pass by,
No.
and that's
Do
why
you
I have a
do you carry a journal, Don? I mean, do you like write your ideas down in a journal as you think of them? Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, that's a great idea for authors. I mean, if you're out there, take your journal with you, because these ideas will hit you at the moment you don't expect, and you can just at least write down, because otherwise then they'll be lost. You'll forget or lose the concept. So that's cool. That's cool that you do
Yeah,
that.
at any time I get an idea, I write it down, and normally when I get an idea, my mind just automatically starts spinning that
Yeah.
tail and trying to figure out what the story is. So I'll get, sidetracked, whatever I'm doing, wherever I'm at. If I get an idea, I'll be in my journal and I'll be kind of writing out a rough outline right there because my mind just automatically starts that story process.
Yep, yep, very nice. Yeah, and you got to have that journal there because to document it so you don't lose that. This third book that I'm writing, the idea came to me when I was kind of half asleep, and just these ideas came to me, and then all of a sudden the story, I'm kind of telling myself the story as I'm asleep, and then I woke up and I grabbed my journal and I start writing down, scribbling down all the stuff I thought about. And the next day, I mean, I'm trying to make sense of this, but it's like, okay, that's a great idea, where's this going. So but yeah, I'm about 62,000 words into that. I usually target the sweet zone of 80 to 90,000 words in my books, which the publishers seem to like. But I'm about 18,000 more words to go to finish this third one.
Now, do you give yourself deadlines for having a certain amount of words written by a certain date? Like, how do you keep yourself motivated? I mean, I know you have, if you're working with a regular publisher, they usually give you your deadline date, but when you're self-publishing, how do you make sure that you are keeping on top of your writing?
I really don't put that kind of pressure on myself or make myself a schedule because I'm kind of already motivated because I just love writing so much that it's not hard to motivate myself. Other than just scheduling the time in and making sure, that I'm getting that done and not neglecting other relationships and stuff. But I don't self-publish and I don't put that kind of pressure on myself, and I'll take my time and then I'll go back and edit. And a lot of times I know a lot of authors will edit, finish their first draft and then edit. But I kind of tend to want to go about 5 or 6 chapters and then I go back and edit and revise. I just do that, and then I move on. I find that when I get to my first draft, I find it much easier than to go back if I've already kind of done some revisions, edits, proofreading, etc. And then I've got a great critique partner in my wife. She reads my work. I mean, she helped me through Heart of Steel. We kind of went round and round on some things and stuff, but she's really, really good at giving me input. And then the second book, White Skies, Black Mingo, she more read for her pleasure. I couldn't write the chapters fast enough for her. You got some more chapters for me today? Because she goes, I loved Heart of Steel. She goes, but White Skies, Black Mingo was like my obsession, because that was her kind of, I mean, it's a forbidden love story. It's a story of, you know, my a young Native American who's fleeing her clan with her mother and shaman grandmother because of an epidemic, kind of relates to today, and they're heading looking for a new home in Wheeling, West Virginia. And then she ends up lost and alone in the wilderness, facing a terrible storm, and through a betrayal, she ends up on a plantation during that time, and eventually she finds herself in the middle of the darkest times of American history, the Civil War, and she finds a love interest and a forbidden love for those times, because interracial relationships in the 1800s were, even to recent history, really were forbidden. and they
Mhm.
couldn't even legally marry and stuff. So that was the inspiration. When I saw that, I'm like, that had to be a great love story. This is a story that's got to be written and created. So that's kind of the gist of White Skies Black Mingo that's out right now. And yeah, my wife is a huge fan. She now she has the book in her hand so she can read it, as because she likes to read paperback books. She actually have a book in her hand. She's not a big Kindle person.
I'm the same way.
Yes, so she's like, "Oh, I can't wait to read this again now that I have the book in my hand." And that's big because she's tough. She's a tough critic. She's a tough sell. So I know that if I sell her, I know I got something good.
There you go.
Mhm.
And I think it's really interesting that you said that you go 5 chapters or so and then you go back and revise. To me, that sounds like the perfect way to do things because if you don't revise what little you have written and you keep going, your story could take a wrong turn. You know what I
Yes,
mean? So
agree.
if you revise those first 5 chapters, then you know you have a solid foundation for the beginning of the book and you can base the rest of the book off of that. But I feel like if you just write the entire first draft
Mhm.
without revising anything, you have a lot of loose ends, you have a lot of different ways the story could go without realizing what's the best way that the story could go until you get to the whole revision process and then have to rewrite half the book.
No, that's a great point, and that's exactly why I do that. You made a perfect point because to me it helps then reiterate and really establish the story in my head as to where I'm going and where it's going, and just to reread it and then other ideas come. But I totally agree with that statement. That's exactly why I do that. Because I don't want to think that I get all the way to the end of the first draft and then where is the story going? Where did I go here? And you're right. Then I would have to probably rewrite half of it. So I kind of do that as I go along, and I think that works for me. It might not work for everybody, but it definitely works for me.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's what I always want to inspire other writers to understand that there are so many different processes. There are so many different ways of doing things, and you have to find what way works best for you.
Sure.
It's not a matter of following somebody else's path or somebody else's process.
Right.
There are so many ways of writing and going through the entire writing process, and all of them are right. If it
Mhm.
works for you, then it's right for you. And I always want to encourage all writers, even if they're writing their 15th book or their first book, that you don't have to stick to one specific process. You can experiment, you can branch out, you have to make it yourself. You kind of have to personalize it, not only to you, but also to the book that you're writing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I've read books that have just a beautiful structure, but they don't have a good story and they're boring. And then I've read other books that they violated a lot of rules and they don't have the best structure, but the story is just so darn good, that so to me, I kind of lean towards that opinion that, the story is definitely more important. I mean, structure is definitely important, but to me, a good story is the most important aspect. So if you can tell a good story, people are going to read your book and they're going to love your book, and then you can work on the structural things as your career goes along. But be a good story.
Absolutely. I think structure is kind of a foundation to start with, but after that, once you learn what the basic structure is, then you can start your storytelling. Then you can build off of that because that way you know kind of how the story is supposed to progress and how different things are supposed to be revealed in order for it to make sense to the reader.
Right.
But
Yeah.
overall, it's your story that's gonna sell people. It's not the structure. They can't tell the structure from reading the excerpt on the back of the book.
Exactly. Unless you're a professional writer and you're looking at that, most of your readers are people who are just normal average people. They just want to be entertained. They want to be engrossed and taken on a journey, So if you can do that with your story, you're gonna make a lot of fans. So
Absolutely. Well, is there anything that you would like to say to aspiring writers or beginner writers out there about getting started in the author career?
absolutely. Start today. Don't wait till tomorrow. Start right now. Right now as you're listening to this, sit down and start writing. If you've got a concept for a story, start your research. Start researching that and put it together, and just, you just have to do it. You just have to sit down and really commit yourself and the time to do it, because tomorrow never comes, and it's like years go by so quickly. You just can't procrastinate. Just my best advice is to do it today. Start right now.
Absolutely. I think I just put a tweet up yesterday that said, "Don't die with your stories inside of you."
Yes.
And it sounds morbid at first, but the point is, don't wait until tomorrow. You don't know if tomorrow's promised. You got to be able to get your story out as soon as possible. If it's in your head, it needs to be on paper. It needs to be read by other people.
I think that's a wonderful concept. I think that's a great idea. Exactly. Because everybody has a story, everybody has a story inside them. Everybody has a story of their family, everybody has something. And it's like, yeah, put that story on paper. Tell the story, share the story. Because people are interested, we want to hear, we want to live those stories and hear, great tales.
Especially in this day and age where
Yes.
there's so much information online and
Yeah.
everything like that. But what you can't find online is what your neighbor's life is really like. You know,
Right.
you can't get to know a person
Mhm.
by Googling them.
Right.
Even with social media and everything out there, it's not the same as actually telling your own story. And
Mhm.
that's why I think so many more people should entertain the concept of writing a book, even if it's just about your own personal story, because people today, they want to learn, they want to know things, and things like that, things like your own personal story, the only way they're going to find out is if you write it down.
Exactly. Totally concur with that, Don. Very well said. So,
Alrighty. Well,
yeah.
thank you so much for meeting with me.
Oh,
I
yeah.
am excited. I actually really, really want to read Heart of Steel right now.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Appreciate that. Yeah. And like I said, anyone that's interested can find me on my website, authorkevinmiller.com. And I've got links to everything up there. I've got links to Heart of Steel. I got links to White Skies Black Mingo. They're both on Amazon. They're both in paperback and ebook if you're a Kindle person. And I also have off my website, I have a link to PayPal where I can send out autograph copies as well.
Oh, neat.
So yeah, visit me, drop a line. I have my email up there. I love to hear from readers, once when they read my book, when some people aren't into writing reviews, so it's nice to get an email from them to get questions. I've spent some time on the radio and the media and stuff. I actually was on Channel 7 in San Diego's TV last year, talking about Heart of Steel. So I get a lot of calls and emails and stuff, people asking questions. I read the book and they, asked this question or that question. I love that. I'm totally open to that. And I love connecting with readers.
That is awesome. And I hope that this interview will help connect with readers as well. And not only readers, but other writers, because essentially readers are writers and writers are readers.
Yes.
So
Yep.
hopefully that all connects together.
Two sides of the same coin. Exactly. Mhm.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for meeting me, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you, Don. Thanks for the invite. You have a great day too.
Thanks.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.